Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to my humble abode. We're gonna go. This video is going over the first four chapters. I know it sounds like a lot, but there's a lot to go through, and I will endeavor as best I can not to bore you too much. I'll hit the highlights, which means you need to read the chapters. So, chapter one. What do you think theory is? I mean, a lot of times we hear somebody say something about, well, in theory, so and so, or theoretically, so and so. And most people think of a theory as just a guess. Well, actually, it's a set of systemic hunches, systemic guesses. And it can't be just one. The book has a cartoon about a dog thinking that people are crazy because we have opposable thumbs. There has to be more to it than that. And there needs to be a relationship between the hunters, between the guesses. It can't just be, this obscure guess and that obscure guess, and uh, it has to be related to one another somehow. Now, there's different ways to look at it. When you write a theory or deal with a theory, you can consider it a net. You're throwing a net out there and you're bringing the stuff back in, and the net is designed to catch a certain thing. Or you can look at it like a lens. Some lenses make I have some sunglasses that are rose-colored glasses, and they're that way because of my specific vision problem. But I can't see blue lights with those lenses, so it filters out certain things. Or you could look at it like a map. Yeah, theory is a map that's going to get you from point A to point B, point C to point D. I mean, think about it. If you want to go to Houston, Texas, there's probably 500 different ways to go there. But there's probably two or three ways that are better than anything else, depending upon your preferences. So it helps a map to help you figure out how you're going to get to your point, your destination. So what is communication? And when we're taking a communication class, we have comm theories, but what exactly is communication? And it's creating and interpreting messages and looking for or getting a response. My wife often tells me that men have selective hearing. We hear what we want to hear. So if she wants to get my attention, she needs to word her question in a way that's going to fit into my selective hearing category. I think we all do it in some aspects, forms, or something else. My kids and grandkids are the same way. If you ask them to do something they don't want to do, they don't hear you, or they're playing their game or whatever they're doing. But we're trying to get a response from the message that we're sending. And it doesn't have to be a verbal message. When I did my research for my PhD, I interviewed 13 couples on how they maintain their communication, how their communication tool set or skill set changed when one of them went blind. Because they had to both be sighted when they got together, now one is blind. And for example, if you've ever been in a relationship, you know what the look is. The look is one of two things. Either come here, baby, I want you, or stay the hell away from me, don't talk to me, and I'm mad at you. Well, if you can see, it's real easy to tell those two apart. No words have to be exchanged, the message has been communicated. And the response is either to sit down or to come there. Well, with my loss of vision, I can't see that facial expression anymore, that look. So I have to rely on the verbal part. So, and it's messages in various mediums. It's not just words written or words spoken or nonverbal. It's television and radio and nowadays text and phones and all kinds of good things. And it's about creating. We are going to create a message, and we want to get that message over to somebody else, and they're going to have to interpret that message and hopefully understand it the way we meant it. Well, polysemic means that we don't all have the same meaning for something. For example, dog. I say dog, and some people automatically think of a vicious German Shepherd or Doberman Pinscher or Rottweiler is going to eat them up. And other people think about that cute little fur ball they have at home that is waiting, and as soon as they walk in the door, jumps up and down, I love you, I love you, I love you. So we have different interpretations of the same word. And the interpretation changes with the relationship. There are many of my guy friends I'll say love you to. But it means something completely different than me saying love you to my wife or my kids. And we want to get a response from them. Whoever we give a message to, we want to get a response. And sometimes it's a verbal response, sometimes it is a hand gesture, sometimes it's a smile, nonverbal. We don't know, but we're looking for something. When we communicate, we want to get a response. So theories arrange ideas in a way to clarify the communication. Chapter 2. Told you I'm going through these fairly quick. Chapter 2 talks about the different types of research, basically, different types of theories. Behavioral scientists look and use a scientific method. We want to find out what happened at this point in time. Rhetoricians, on the other hand, study the way words and symbols are used. A lot of times nowadays you can hear talk in the news about constitutional purists, people that want to read the Constitution the way it was written 200 years ago. What was on their minds at that time? Luckily, the book doesn't use the Constitution. It uses a Budweiser commercial. And I happened to be there last week at the one in St. Louis, and the Clydesdales are amazing up close. So I have the link here to that commercial, and I will post it in the assignment. So you can take a look at it, but which analysis do you agree with the most? Do you agree with the behavioral scientist, or do you agree more with the rhetorician? Which way are you leaning? And you may lean that way your entire communication career, and you may change. And I lean both ways occasionally, depending on what I'm doing. The humanistic approach is what it's like to be in their shoes. And what is it like to be that person? I grew up in the South, and I was living in the barracks, and I had a rebel flag in my room. Mind you, this was 40 years ago when I lived in the barracks. One of my black friends was in there drinking with me, and he kept looking at the flag. And I said, "What's going on?" And he told me how it made him feel. I had never thought about that. So I understood it from his perspective when I listened to his perspective. And so that's something that the humanistic approach does, is what is it like in their shoes? There are multiple realities out there. Because I see something one way does not mean that that's the way it is. That's the way I perceive it because of the cultural layers that have created me. So we have to understand that what we know is not always right. It may be right to us, but it's not always right. Excuse me. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we, pardon me, how do we know what we know? Determinism is behavior caused by culture. Um, Girls wear pink, boys wear blue. Boys don't cry. Men play football, girls play with dolls. Our culture has created a you. Um, and each thing that has affected you is caused you to be a certain way. Whether it be the religion that you were raised in or lack of religion thereof, where you were born. Were you born in New York or were you born in Georgia? I was born in Germany. How the things around you affect you and mold you, basically. So your behavior is caused by your culture in many aspects. Your values guide your thoughts. This is what I value, and therefore my thoughts go along those lines. If I value friendship and camaraderie uh, more so than religion and education, then that's where I'm going to focus myself. Let's see, empirical evidence. When we research, we're going to try to find something that's going to give us an idea. And that's what empirical evidence is: data collected. Not anything, but if you do a survey or you count the number of white cars that go by, what data is collected is what the empirical evidence is. Emancipation is you're free from restraints. You've all heard the word Emancipation Proclamation. You've heard emancipated person. It means that basically you're free from restraints. So, objective versus imperative analysis. Meta theory is theory about theory. It's an overarching view of all the theories. What is the basis of them? What drives them? Where are they categorized at? And figure 2-1 shows where the theories are located on the objective interpretive continuum. So if you have objective all the way over to the left and interpretive all the way over to the right, or whatever way you want to lay them out, where do these theories that the book talks about fit? Because some of them you're going to like and other ones you're not. Some of them are going to fit your criteria and others are not. If you lean toward interpretive research, then the theories that are leaning toward interpretive are going to be more your style. Chapter 3. Okay, we got this big book of theories. There's 30-something theories in here. And what does it mean? Where do I go? What do I do? Well, you need to understand the starting point of each theory. You need to understand if it's objective or interpretive. You need to understand what that theory will help you figure out, because all theories aren't equal. Some are much better in some things than others. And when we get into the theories, you'll understand that a lot more. The different circumstances of what you're looking for brings into different theories are best for that. Because, like we said earlier, it's objective. There's people see the world differently. Okay, the scientific standard number 1. If we're looking at the objective theories, there's basically 6 scientific standards that help guide us to make choices. So if you're looking at a objective theory, the first standard is it needs to predict future events. When you do this research, will you be able to tell, uh, in a general sense, what will happen if you have other people in the same situation? It needs to explain the data collected. I mean, it's great if you collect data, but if nobody can understand what it is or why it's for, it is not going to help you. Relative simplicity. I love that phrase because there's some theories that I didn't think were very simplistic at all, especially when I was a student. Um, but you don't want something so convoluted that you can't figure out how to get from point A to point B. And the book has an example of Goldberg and how, and if you've played the game Mousetrap, it's that I think that's what it was designed on, was his design. But it needs to be, if you have too many steps in it, there's too many chances for something to go wrong. Your hypothesis must be tested. You've got to be able to test your hypothesis, and it has to be have falsifiability. What does that mean? It means that you can prove it wrong. If you can't prove something wrong, it's not a good hypothesis. If you cannot prove one way or the other what something is, why research it? Because you can't prove it. So your idea has to be, your hypothesis has to have falsifiability to it. Practical utility. There's got to be a practical utility for your research or the theory you're planning on using. If it's not practical, why even mess with it? Some of my classmates in grad school, they did different, we all did different dissertations. One friend of mine did one on speed dating. It's like, okay, I guess I was old, I was married, I wasn't on speed date, so it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Mine, on the other hand, I was looking at how these couples manage. Could it help? Did it help? I don't know. And it's quantitative research. Quantitative research basically, you have experiments. You can do an experiment to see how people react, and you can do surveys. Well, experiments need to be thought out very well because there's variables, especially if you got multiple people in there. Surveys, the problem with surveys is the person completing them may put down what they think you want them to put down, if that makes any sense. I mean, I don't really like surveys a whole bunch because if I'm working for the National Christian Foundation and I want to give a survey on sexuality, and there's a question on there about gay or bisexual, okay, I might not want to put yes because I know they're looking for a no. Does that make any sense? Or at the end of the semester, you're going to get a survey. And what did the professor do? 70, 80% of you are going to go right down the line. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So they aren't the most accurate thing in the world. Interpretive research, on the other hand, you have to have a clarification of values. What values are you going to use to measure this? My values as a 63-year-old white retired military raised Baptist person, or your values as a 20-year-old college student, Gen, whatever Gen it is now. You hope to get a new understanding of people. The nice thing about interpretive research, objective research, since it's the use of the scientific method, it had these solid steps. This. Um, Interpretive research has more of an aesthetic appeal to it. If you get a good interpretive researcher, it's like reading a good book. You know, they use adjectives and adverbs and make it colorful and bring it out more so they're telling a story. It has to stand up in the community. You have to have a community of agreement. I can write a paper on anything and I can get it published. And if my peers who, study communication the same methodology that I do, think I'm a blubbering idiot, they will tell me. And so I won't have any community of agreement on it. It will get bad comments, and nobody will use it, nobody will believe it. So, maybe they think Vern is biased because he's blind and he doesn't like sighted people. I don't know. Hopefully, a good interpretive researcher, when they perform research, their objective is to reform society. I want this aspect of society to change so blind people have more opportunities for so and so, or women have more opportunities, or minorities have more opportunities, or the people in power realize that their power isn't everything, whatever. And it's qualitative research. The book talks about two types: textual analysis. That's when they're reading the text and trying to understand its meaning from its source. What did Vern mean when he wrote this? And ethnography. I've actually gotten published an autoethnography paper, which means ethnography means from the perspective of the people or group. So a lot of researchers will go into a group and study them. Let's say that they're a New Yorker and they went to Appalachia to study the Appalachian people. And they'll try to get in it so they can see it from their perspective. Oftentimes, I'm not going to say oftentimes, sometimes the people never really let the researchers see the honesty, because people change their habits and change what they do when they're being observed. And other times the ethnographer will, quote, go native. I decided I'm going to live in Appalachians and I'm going to talk like this, and I'm going to dress like that, and lose all perspective. An autoethnographer, I wrote about the becoming blind. Autoethnography was about me, kind of like a biography or an autobiography. But it was my perspective of the world as I went blind. You use your senses, or you can use your senses, watching people. What are they doing? How are they walking? What are they wearing? If you're trying to survey Christians in Israel, Well, if they walk around with a cross instead of a Star of David, they're probably a Christian. So, use your eyes, use your ears. You hear somebody talking in English and you're in Germany, then maybe they're not German, maybe they're American, but most Germans speak English. There's still an accent, you can hear it. You can use your intuition for finding patterns. I know that how couples act around one another. A couple, they hold hands, they hug each other. You can use your intuition to say, okay, that person is doing these things. They're probably a couple. Chapter 4. We're almost done with me today, folks. The socio-psychological tradition. They look for communication truths. They use systemic observation. They look for cause and effect. What causes this and what's the effect? Now, correlation and isn't always, Vern was walking down the street and a car backfired. Vern had a heart attack and keeled over. It wasn't the car having the backfire that made me keel over. It's because when Vern got out of the army, he ate all the wrong stuff and quit exercising, and he got fat, and his cholesterol went up, and his blood pressure went up. So, because the two happened at the same time, correlation is not causation. So you look for cause and effect. What this has happened? What caused it to happen? And they want to try to predict the future. And I'm doing this research, so if children are have their right hand tied behind their back from the age of 5 to 7, they become left-handed. Cybernetic tradition is information processing. How does the system work? How does the computer work? How does the person work? What kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of control is there? Rhetorical condition is more of an art form. Persuasion, crafted, focused arguments, and organization of ideas. Oh, something I wanted to mention earlier and I neglected to. The difference between quantitative and qualitative. Personally, I think a mixed method is best. You do a little of both. But they asked me when I was a PhD student to describe the difference. And what I came up with, because a friend of mine was a marine researcher at the time, and they were doing a study out in the Gulf about marine mammals. And so they put sonar buoys out, and they counted the number of interactions the mammals had with their pings and their voices and all that other stuff to 2 years previous. And they decided that there was less activity of sea mammals in the Gulf of Mexico on this date. Okay, quantitative. This number versus this number, and this number is lower. But qualitative is, why is that number lower? Why are there less marine mammals in the Gulf at that point in time? Was it because the water temperature was higher? Was it because the oil slick, because of the BP horizon? Was it because there's less food in that area? Was it because it was mating season and they were somewhere else? So quantitative tells you what happened and can predict what's going to happen usually, but qualitative tells you why it happened. Now, of course, we couldn't interview the whales and find out why they weren't there, but that was just my rendition. So, semiotic tradition. Verbal and nonverbal signs. The different meanings can lead to different interpretations. One of my favorites is, y'all know what this is? Peace. Do y'all know what this is? In some English countries, it means the same thing this does. Just to where your hand's at. So you could be going, as my grandkids did, deuces, and thinking it's cool, but somebody from a different culture would interpret it differently. There's all kinds of nonverbal signals too, like this means okay. It means asshole in some countries. This means you crazy. In Argentina, it means you got a phone call. So verbal and nonverbal signs have different meanings and can lead to different interpretations. Symbols are arbitrary and culturally dependent. You need to understand that. Even in the United States, using symbols such as words, what does pie mean? If you're raised in the South, probably pecan. Maybe coconut or buttermilk, chocolate. If you're raised in New York, pepperoni, sausage, Chicago style, New York style. Same word, different meanings. Sociocultural tradition. Reality is socially constructed. It's that simple. Reality is socially constructed. What is real to you was constructed because of the cultural norms that you were brought up in. This is real to me. It's real to me that a man and a woman are the only ones who can get married because that's the way I was raised. It's real to me that anybody can get married because I was raised to have that understanding of freedom. It was, you know, when I grew up, smoking was, my dad would smoke going through Sears. Okay. Now, smoking is a bad thing. But vaping is good now. So your reality was constructed socially. A critical condition, basically, it's not a what they look at, it's what they're against. And it had to deal with the Frankfurt School and Marx and all that other good stuff. But they're basically against three things. One of them is the power imbalance. They want to make sure that the power imbalance does not skew communication. And one of the easiest ways to see that is history is written by the winners. So whoever's in power writes history, and from their perspective, they did a good job. Whoever they defeated maybe thinks it sucks. But power skews the communication. Blind reliance on scientific method is skewed. Because no matter how much you try to take your values out of the scientific method, it is still the survey that you write, the questions that you ask, your analysis of the information is skewed by who you are to an extent. So blind reliance on scientific method is skewed. You know, it's not perfect. It's not just right. You need to be aware of that. And mass media reinforces the power imbalance. You know, we called them gatekeepers and when I was studying mass media. Somebody lets this get on the news. Somebody makes this a point. Some of the news people say if it bleeds, it leads. So you might have a wonderful story of somebody not getting killed, But you might have another story of somebody getting killed, and that's the one that's going to be on the lead. Because mass media reinforces the power imbalance. This is what the people, we live in Columbus, Georgia. Most of us do. I don't know where all you live. But North Columbus has got Green Island Hills and the more affluent people, and South Columbus has got the less influent people, shall we say. The news will tell you that this drug bust happened in South Columbus. We've had some very high dollar drug busts in Green Island Hills, but that doesn't make the news. So mass media reinforces the power imbalance. Phenomenological tradition, observation from the standpoint of the person. Ethnography, like we were talking about earlier, autoethnography. How do I see the world? I could study how women see the world differently. It's called the feminist standpoint theory of communication. We'll cover it later. But I could study how women feel about, I don't know, the pay disparity for women. As a man, I have my own perspective. But if I were doing the phenomenological tradition, I would have to be observing it from the standpoint of the woman. I'd have to try to put my biases and my values and everything that I grew up with being a white male aside and look at it from her perspective. Some traditions are close to others and overlap. There's 6, 7 traditions here, and some of them are kind of close to one another. And some of them overlap a little bit. The ethical tradition is not really one of the traditions, but I guess they're trying to get it inserted in it and make it another one. But it asks questions like, do you have to be honest? When you are writing something, when you're researching something, when you're talking about something, do you have to be honest? Well, if you ask a politician, the answer is no. Many politicians lie. They will tell this group of people what they want to hear and this group of people what they want to hear because they want to get elected. If you're in a relationship, my opinion, do you have to be honest? No. You have to be honest on the big things, but let's face it. If my wife worked really hard to fix me my favorite meal, and I came in and I sat down, and it was okay, but it wasn't like my mama made it, would it be okay for me to say, mom does it better? Or me it was great because I wanted to do it again. Okay? So that's my opinion. Does freedom of expression have limits? We all talk about being free in America and freedom of expression and things like that. Does it have limits? Well, I want to let my freak flag fly. I go to jail for that in both places. So, what are your limits as far as a communication researcher? And when is persuasion intimidation or coercion? You can look at the news a lot of times nowadays, especially with the political stuff going on. It's my First Amendment right, freedom of speech. No, I wasn't intimidating anybody. Use your objection on what you think they were or were not doing. So that is the first 4 chapters. I hope that I have made your day extra special by being here. I will post my video and my notes and link to that Budweiser commercial on the assignments. And I will post a discussion. And the discussions question like you did were the introductions. Read my thoughts and comment. and then by Thursday, and then comment on 2 of your peers. And remember, wow, I didn't know that doesn't count as a comment. Me too does not count as a comment. I didn't know that either does not count as a comment. Be a little bit more creative. Let's pretend that you are a rhetorician and you have that artistic flair. Okay? Thanks a lot for listening. If there's any problems you have my email address. Email me. I'll get back with you as soon as I can. Thanks again. Have a great week. Bye.